let's talk about how to plan out your 6 months to your Ironman or 70.3. It's really important to say this, but a lot of people underestimate or overestimate it. You've got 6 months to go until you race. Accept that you have enough time to make big gains in the fitness that you've got, and respectfully use that time so that you don't try and do too much too early, because trying to do that is going to blow your training out of the water. The number one thing you're going to need in your training is consistency. Day in, day out, week in, week out, month in, month out. Guiding principle has got to be to train today, but not so hard, so intense, or so long that you can't train again tomorrow. Okay, let's define the scope of the challenge for you. An Ironman, it's a 3.8k swim, it's a 108k bike ride, and then you've got to run a marathon. A 70.3 is obviously half of that, but it's still a massive challenge to do those things. And each one of those three things on its own would be a really big challenge. If you told a friend you were going to swim the Bristol Channel, you were going to ride your bike to London, or you're going to do a marathon, people respect that because they are events worthy of respect. So you have to see that. You're going to have to approach these lifetime fitness events with respect, then see that they're all bolted together. You then get an idea of the scale of the endurance training load you're going to have to put yourself through. But the key here is going to be to train for the one event, not to train for 3 individual events and try and stick the training together. And we'll get into that a little bit more in one of the future points. Point number 2, train for your Ironman around your real life, not like a professional or not like an influencer that you've seen on Instagram or YouTube. You'll often see and hear people talking about the 20, the 30, the 40-hour training week that these people put together when they don't have any other things to do other than train all day. If you've got a 40, 50, 60-hour work week, you've got a family, you've got the school run to do, you've got an own business to run, all of those things, it is incredibly hard to try and find even 1 hour a day to train around that. If you can find the hour a day and a couple of extra sessions that you can extend, do your longer long ride and your longer long run later in the plan, you have enough time to train for an Ironman. We've coached hundreds, nearly thousands of athletes at this point on this kind of plan that fits around real life. If you can carve out an hour a day, especially in the early days, that's enough to build a sustainable habit of fitness. And then as you get closer to your goal event, you can start extending your longest long run, long ride, long swim, find an extra 5 minutes here, an extra 10 minutes here, and extend those long sessions. The key to all of this is consistent daily training that fits in around your work life, your home life, your family life, and your health. And that's what you've got to filter all this through. Does the training I'm trying to do actually fit around my life? Does it complement it? Or is it going to break me trying to do this? Because if the honest answer is what you're trying to do is going to break you or break your job or break your family, there's no point in doing this in the first place. It's all got to fit together. Point number 3, reframe the idea of racing your Ironman as completing it well. Because for 90% of the athletes, the limiter of your performance on race day is going to be endurance. It's not going to be speed. If you approach it with a how fast can I go mindset, you're going to end up pushing yourself to do the wrong sessions in training. Success on race day is going to be about doing the day comfortably and efficiently so you can run well, and particularly run the second half of your marathon or half marathon well. It's not about going flat out from the gun in the first 200 meters of the swim. So if you approach this with the right mindset from the start, and it's not about racing, but it's completing it well, you then have the mindset to pace all of your training in the same way that you're going to pace the event on event day. It's not about going as hard as you can. It's about setting yourself up so the last hour or 2 of the day, you can push yourself as hard as you're able to. If you go too hard early on, you're not going to be able to push yourself at the back end. And the same is true for your overall training plan. Point number 4, the guiding principle of your training is going to be do enough training today that gets you tired, but that you can recover from, not so much that you can't train again tomorrow. And this sounds really obvious, but it really isn't obvious. You've got to make sure that each day you train enough to sort of force some adaptations on your body, but the overall success on race day is going to be consistently training day after day rather than doing one really big session and then needing 2 or 3 days to recover. So finding that how much is enough limit is going to be really, really important to you. And my guiding principle here for people is, if in doubt, take a little bit more rest. The discipline part of training, people often think is being willing to get out of bed and push yourself really hard early in the morning, or to push yourself to do something on Christmas Day, or to get out when it's raining really hard. Honestly, I believe the best use of your discipline is to make sure you take enough rest so that you're recovering within each week, recovering within each month, recovering within each block. That's where the best use of the discipline is going to lie. Point number 5, let's talk about a weekly structure that's simple and repeatable and that you can make into a template. So a typical training week for athletes, we're going to be looking at 3 rides, 3 runs, 2 to 3 swims, and 1 guaranteed recovery day. So in and amongst that, you're going to add all those numbers up and you're going to think, well, I'm going to have to be training twice a day. What I'd encourage you to do is think of it as combining some training sessions. So maybe you can go to the pool and swim and then get on a treadmill. Maybe you can do your bike ride and then you do a run afterwards. I'm a big fan of combining the swim and the run workouts together. If you can do that, really time efficient. If you're at the gym, do your swim straight out, get straight onto the treadmill, get your shorter endurance runs done as part of that. But the most important part of this is that 1 guaranteed recovery day each week. What we're looking for there is starting the next training week feeling 100% recovered and ready to go. And if that's the case, you've done a brilliant job. I would much rather you err on the side of caution with the training and are able to start the next week ready to go again than push yourself just a bit too hard, just a bit too far at the weekend. Have your recovery day at the Monday and then the Tuesday you're still tired. Each week, we're going to be looking at 2 key rides, a key run, and a key endurance swim. And if you build your week around the idea of those 4 key sessions, everything else is there to support it. And honestly, I really believe 80% of the training value is there in less than 50% of the sessions. Those 2 bike sessions, the key long run, the key endurance swim, they're the building blocks of your week. Everything else is there to support it. I would alternate bike days and run days. I try to avoid stacking the long ride and the long run back to back at the weekend until much closer to the race day. Try and spread them out, and then that way you spread your fatigue out. And then that way we've got to the point where we've got a repeatable weekly training structure. So I'll talk you through what this looks like for our athletes. Usually we'll do bike on Tuesday and Thursday and Saturday, run Wednesday, Friday, Sunday. We'll put a couple of short strength conditioning sessions in there. We'll swim Wednesday and Friday on the same days as the run. We'll have a recovery swim on the Monday, which we might or might not do depending on how much recovery we actually need. For some people, that's just going to make them more tired and it's pointless. If you schedule out your week like this, you've got a really good template to rinse and repeat every week, and you can just keep ticking those sessions off. Point number 6, let's talk through the progression of the long sessions and then how we build up to race simulation weekends. We can safely extend the long ride by about 30 minutes a week. We can safely extend a long run by about 15 minutes a week. And we'll try and build in an easier recovery week once every 4th week. So typically those long sessions get longer over 3 weeks and then get short again in the 4th week. And then we go again and we extend again. If you try to make those jumps bigger, especially on the running, that's when we start to get into the territory of perhaps starting to worry that we're going to get overly sore, get a niggle, get an injury. If you're an athlete with a multi-year history of endurance training, you might well be able to extend your long ride by more than that 30 minutes a week if you've done it in previous years. But for the running, I would always urge you, caution, don't extend it by more than that 15 minutes a week. And then that way you can be sure athletes are their own worst enemy when it comes to running. If you're doing your long run and you feel good, the number of athletes who've said, I decided to tack on an extra 15 minutes onto this long run, and then in the last 5 minutes of that, my calf started to go. If we can just stick to the script, that 15-minute increase is enough that you're going to push your body to adapt, but not break it or get any soreness. Our goal here is by the late phase of the build of your Ironman training, we're able to swim 4 kilometers continuously. We're able to ride somewhere in the region of 6 hours or 180k, whichever comes first. And we're going to do our long run in the region of 3 hours. Even if on race day it's going to take you longer, I won't have athletes run longer than 3 hours. And the reason for that is it just takes exponentially long to recover from more than a 3-hour run. If you're an athlete who realistically is going to be power walking most of this on race day, we're going to substitute in long power walks for those runs. You've got to be realistic here. If it's going to be taking you 6 hours on event day, you're better off going out and doing a 5-hour power walk instead of a 2.5-hour run. It won't take as much out of you, and it's more specific training for what you're actually going to face on race day itself. 2 weeks out from Ironman race day, I'm going to have our athletes do a race simulation weekend. And what that's essentially going to be is a broken Ironman, or a broken 70.3 for our 70.3 distance athletes. It's going to be broken up over a long weekend. So we'll do the swim Friday evening, a bike first thing Saturday morning. So for Ironman athletes, we'll do a 6-hour ride with a 45-minute run off the bike. And then very first thing Sunday morning, we'll do a 2-hour run. And we're going to practice this using the race nutrition, the hydration, the electrolyte strategy that we're going to do. We're going to use the race kit. We're going to wear the clothes we're going to wear on race day, ride the bike we're going to ride on race day. Then everything is practiced. With a lot of our athletes, I'll also build in a second one of those weekends. It might be 5 weeks or so before race day. Sometimes athletes will race a 70.3 in the lead up to an Ironman instead of doing that. But the race simulation weekends are going to be absolutely key for you being really confident. You can then run long the day after you've done a long brick session. Point number 7, I can't stress this enough. The key to your fitness for Ironman is your bike fitness. Firstly, the bike leg is going to be the biggest chunk of your day. Aerobic bike fitness transfers really well over to running. If you're fit on the bike, you'll find you can run really well. It doesn't seem to work the other way around. If you're a good runner and you get on the bike, there's a different muscle firing pattern. The fact it feels like you're pushing more force with your thighs, it just doesn't seem to work as well. We're going to prioritize our bike fitness. They are our first 2 most important key sessions each week. A lot of people struggle with that because they want to train like a runner and a swimmer and a cyclist to train for 3 separate events. Think of this as training for one overall event. And that means all of these elements are going to fit together. The aerobic fitness you develop on the bike will bleed over into the run, and to a lesser extent bleed over onto the swim. And if something has to go, don't let it be the bike training. Point number 8, let's talk about running. Never get to the point where you're sore the day after the run. Never getting to the point where you try to push through the soreness, and always, always, always do what you can to protect yourself from niggles and injuries. And the best way we've found to do this with long runs over 60 minutes, we will break up into a 9-minute run, 1-minute walk. So it's this run-walk method made famous initially by Jeff Galloway. It's absolutely revolutionary in terms of how little fatigue you feel the day after a long run and how little soreness you feel. If you can run for 60 minutes today, you could do a 9-1 run and you could probably do 2 hours with the same level of fatigue the next day. Now, I'm not advising that you go and do that. Obviously, that's just to give you an example of how effective that 1-minute walk break is every 10 minutes at reducing the amount of soreness. Remember that we want to be able to train again the next day. So when you're in the phase of training, when your long run has got long, when it's 2.5, 2:45, 3 hours long, you're going to have to do some kind of training on the bike the next day after doing that. If you're trying to go into that session already sore and tired from the long run the day before, it's really, really difficult to get any meaningful work done. So that 1-minute walk break is revolutionary in terms of how little soreness and tiredness you're going to feel the day after. The second tip I've got for you here is, in the last 12 to 16 weeks in the run up to your Ironman, move your long run into the middle of the week. So for example, have it on a Thursday ahead of a long ride on a Sunday. And that way you've got time to recover from the long run before you go and do the long ride. I'm really not a fan of what used to be titled the Hell Weekend, where you do a long ride on the Saturday and then a long run on the Sunday. If you have to do that long run and you're already tired from the bike ride, you're asking for trouble in terms of niggles, injuries and soreness. If you absolutely have to do those weekend workouts back to back, I'm a much bigger fan of doing the run on the Saturday and the ride on the Sunday. So then you're running on fresher legs, less chance of injury. You're riding on tired legs, which is actually really good training for your Ironman. Point number 9, let's talk about the swim. Most triathletes, your limiter is your technique, it's not your lungs. Almost certainly, if you're an adult onset triathlete, if you've come from a cycling or from a running background, you're fitter than your pool times currently show. And that's not because you're not fit enough to swim faster. It's because your technique isn't good enough to transfer the force to the water to move you through the water faster. So we're going to get fit as a byproduct of practicing good technique in the water rather than by trying to get in and using a runner's or a cyclist's mindset of, I'm going to push myself really hard. The best use of your time is going to be to do specific drills to correct whichever stroke flaws you currently have. I'll go further and encourage you to never swim more than 100 meters without taking a short 5-second break. The reason for that is if you get tired and you get fatigued and your technique starts to break down, you're simply going to embed bad technique. Think of this just like tennis or like golf. It's a skill-based sport. You have to firstly learn the correct technique, but then you have to practice it, and that's what embeds the good technique. In swimming, as you get fatigued, the technique degrades and falls apart, and you end up practicing poor technique. I'm a much bigger fan of actually stopping the session and getting out when you start to feel like that, rather than practicing that bad technique. How will you know when that happens? Well, what will happen is, if you're looking at splits every 100 meters, you'll start to see those splits get slower and slower, even though you're trying the same or even trying harder. So in the early days of your swim training, let's work on technique. I advise getting your technique looked at by a qualified coach, get some video analysis, have someone look at your technique and tell you exactly the drills that you need to do to improve your technique. Typically with our athletes, we work on drills that'll fix body position, breathing, catch. The ones that feel really difficult are the ones that are going to fix the stroke flaw that you currently have. So it's not going to be particularly pleasant, but the one that feels difficult or impossible is probably going to be the drill that you need the most. And finally, point 10, let's talk about recovery and illness and the inevitable interruptions to your training plan. So we're going to plan in one recovery day every week and one lower load recovery week every 4 weeks. That's non-negotiable. That's when you're going to actually absorb the training that you've done and your fitness will increase. If you pick up any kind of illness along the way, that's okay. We've built an extra time into our training plan to allow you to get there, so don't panic. If any kind of illness, even just cold, no training while you're under the weather. Make sure you get fully well and then add 1 to 2 days on extra, and then resume your training with some lower intensity work. You have to make sure you're fully well before you train because you can't get fit and get well at the same time. I don't want you making any big decisions about your races while you're ill or under the weather or frustrated. If you have to take a period of time off, don't have that snap judgment of everything's gone to hell, I may as well drop out of the race. Wait until you're feeling good again if that does happen, because that's really common as well. All of that fitness you built isn't going to go anywhere, so just wait for it to pass and then move back into the phase where you can ease back into training before you make any plans whatsoever about dropping out. I hope this episode has helped you out. I've sketched out the 6 months here. I'm going to turn this into a series. I'm going to expand each of these points into a video each. I hope it's going to be really useful to you. I'm really going to try and allow you to have the tools here to build out your own training plan to Ironman, give you away everything for free that I've got. If you decide you want coaching and to work with us as well, that's fantastic. But I understand that everyone can do that. I was helped out in the early days by people who'd already done Ironmans, and I want to do the same for you. So if you can't afford coaching, you don't want to invest in coaching, that's fine. Hopefully these videos and podcasts will really, really help you out.